right. All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. 7:06 p.m. I will call the meeting to order. I am Jonathan Newsma, fourth ward council member and chair of the Redistricting Committee. We are joined tonight by more staff than usual. We've got Lolita Thomas running the IT. Thank you, Lolita, for joining us. Brian George from the legal department will be here in case we need him to weigh in on any constitutional issues, right? And Mark Varner is from the city's IT department. He is our GIS mapping guy. And when we get to finally look at some maps in just a few minutes, Mark is going to be driving the machine at that point. So I will go ahead and take roll call. Councilmember Wynn. Here. Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
And I am Councilmember Newsma. I am here. And that brings us to what's next on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We've got a backlog of minutes, some 3 from committee meetings and 1 from a an unofficial presentation at a ward meeting. I included just for reference. So if someone would like to make a motion on the minutes.
I will move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes are approved unanimously, which brings us to public comment. Lolita, was there a list or should we just wing it? It's easy enough if we just wing it.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody in person willing desire to make public comment? Go ahead, Tina. If you want to step a little bit closer to the mic so everybody can hear you.
Good evening, Tina Payton. I just wanted to know, was this like the final drawings, what you all are saying, or what are we saying tonight? So when does the public get to see what you're trying to propose?
We're totally going to cover that, and we are later this evening for the first time going to actually be looking at some maps. The intent, hopefully tonight, we will, as a committee, agree on 1, 2, 3 maps to kind of release as finalist maps for another round of public comment, but I'm going to get into that schedule, that process.
And so we can do like before as kind of comment throughout, or you're not?
I prefer to have public comment.
Okay.
The standard
I don't know what
front.
you're going to show, so it's
Yeah.
hard to ask a
Yeah.
question when you don't see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Tina. Let's just go online. If somebody would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. I see Carl. Go ahead, Mr. Klein.
Let's see, is my audio working?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. Well, the minutes were just approved, but I just noticed on page 12 of the packet that it says under C, Ward 5 relative to Ward 5 relative to Ward 6, it says Carl Klein recommended not moving a portion of Ward 6 into Ward 5. That was not stated at that meeting. I did not state that I recommended not moving a portion of Ward 6 into Ward 5, but I did say the rest of that statement. So if that could be corrected, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. It's possible somebody else might have said that, but we can make that change for the public record. Anything else from Mr. Klein? If not,
It's hard to give public comment on the maps when we haven't seen them yet. So
exactly. We are planning another couple of months of public comment on maps once people have had a chance to look at them. Okay, anybody else wishing to make public comment, please raise your Google hand. And I see Cindy Reed, Ms. Reed.
Hi, thank you You said the maps will be released and you're going to have another meeting for public comment. But I guess my question is, are these maps, can they be altered? Are they final, the ones you're going to release today? Or can you alter them based on comments from the?
Nothing, yeah. Nothing is final until the council approves it, which is several months down the road. So we will have the opportunity, or the possibility exists, of further revising the maps once we release some finalists tonight.
Thank you.
I actually would like to, this is Councilmember Burns, make a public comment, just because I wanted to go at the top of the meeting, because you've said it now a few times. I actually do not think we're ready for finalist maps, and I won't spend the time now going into why, but I don't think we're ready for that yet. I think there's a way we can still keep on schedule without, narrowing the maps at this time, and I'll reserve the rest of my comment for when we get to that point on the agenda.
Yeah, I anticipated the possibility of such comments, so we'll roll with those changes when we get to that in the agenda. Is there anybody else who wants to make public comment? All right, well, let's go ahead and
We having like a big meeting in the Parasol room or something.
let me continue with the program here, and I think I'll answer a lot of questions. Okay. Okay. I am sharing this window. I can share them. Stand by. That one. Share. Okay. Can folks see my screen?
Yes, sir.
And if I advance the slides, can you now see the slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. All right. So for those of you kind of just joining the redistricting committee for the very first time, I will refer you to the committee's webpage on the city website. In July, we did a very deep dive on the background and history of redistricting. So that is there. The presentation and the recordings are there for your review if you want to take that deep dive yourself, along with recordings and presentations for all of our previous committee meetings. So we're not going to repeat stuff that we have talked about before, other than to review our process to date here. This process started off back in July when we did two town hall meetings, one in English and one in Spanish. And then over the summer and into the winter, we did some very coordinated and methodical public engagement at a series of committee meetings and also a special board meeting. So that process took us from August of last summer through just a couple weeks ago for the special second board meeting. So we have been gathering input over the last few months. That input I've collated and shared with the committee members. And then over the last week or so, the committee members, keeping all this input in mind, have drafted a map. And we're going to look at those maps in just a couple minutes. And we'll see where we're at. So the intention tonight is to discuss the proposed maps that the four individual committee members have come up with. And then the proposed process moving forward is, if we can narrow it down tonight to a couple of 2-3 maps, 1 to 3, maybe 4, probably not 4. We'll see how the conversation goes. Ideally, we would release some finalist maps this evening. Those would be shared publicly on the website. We've got local press in attendance, so the word would get out. And then from February 28th through April, so basically March and April, we would be doing public input, another round of public comment on those maps. That will include a status report to City Council and council discussion. And all 9 council members plus the mayor, that is tentatively scheduled for the council meeting on March 13th. So council will have an opportunity to provide some feedback. We are dedicating our March committee meeting, which is March 28th, 1 month from tonight, for feedback on our finalist maps. And then when the committee convenes in April, we will have public comment, another round of public comments, but at the end of our April meeting, we will, as a committee, make our recommendation and move 1 map forward to council for approval in May. This is the proposed process moving forward. Legally, we've got plenty of time here. If this does move back a month or 2, we're still going to be fine. I'd like to keep on schedule if we could and not postpone the inevitable here. But I think hopefully this answers some questions as to process and assures members of the public and committee members that public comment is not over, and there will be an opportunity for everybody to weigh in on some actual maps. And so that what the process will look like kind of depends on how things go tonight, and we'll kind of circle back at the end of our map discussion and see how we want to proceed. So just as a refresher, our starting point is this. Our current map is out of whack. Our total deviation is over 20%. That's this number right here. And that number by law needs to be less than 10%. As close to 0 theoretically as possible, but less than 10%. We can get away with something less than 16.4%, but I think we can do certainly better than 10%. And just to reiterate briefly the previous findings of this committee, we have confirmed that we do need to redistrict. We've confirmed our desire to continue having at least 3 wards that are majority non-white. We've confirmed our intent or desire to have downtown Evanston represented by multiple council members. And we also decided to pursue an incremental approach. We're not throwing out the map and starting over. We had a discussion about this early in the process and decided that to avoid confusion and keep things as simple as possible, we will adjust borders bit by bit on the edges and make it as few changes as possible to get those numbers to balance. So that's our starting point. And now, for the first time ever in the history of this committee, we will actually be looking at some new proposed maps. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn us over to Mark Varner, who's the city's GIS expert. And we have worked together to randomize the 4 maps so they don't have a particular council member's name on these maps. And so here we're in uncharted territory. Maybe we just go through these maps one by one and see where we're at.
Can it be bigger? Screen? Get rid of the.
We're going to try and make that screen bigger. Stand by. I think you can hide the people.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Move them. You can still see it. We don't have to see them.
Okay. What is that? All right. I
There you go. Where you're hovering over something over to you. Maybe you can click one of the icons you see that are popping up.
This one?
Pin the middle.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize this.
Okay.
I think there might be something with this. So let's go to option A. Not sure whose this is. And so for option A, let's take a look at the statistics there, Mark, and see where we're at on total deviation. Like, pretty bad. 2.29. Option A is down to 2.29%, which is this number here. That's the number that's currently 20.4% and needs to be less than 10%. So we are, in that regard, doing all right with option A. And in terms of majority and non-white representation, in this map, we continue to have 3 wards that are majority white. We have 2, 5, 8 that are majority non-white. So we meet our first, at least 2 of our tests there. Mark is going to go back to the map. And so what are we looking at here? I'll just kind of talk through this one as I see it, and if any committee members want to weigh in as I'm going through this, please do. But it looks like there's fairly few changes, if any, to this border here. Looks like this block, this chunk here, has been moved from Ward 2 to Ward 9. And Mark, maybe you can mouse where I'm pointing. Robert Crown remains in the 4th ward in this one. This chunk that used to be in Ward 3 has been moved to Ward 1.
Where?
This chunk right here used to be in Ward 1, and we've moved that. Used to be in Ward 3. We've moved that to Ward 1. This stuff up here looks a little bit different. And we've moved the 5th ward border maybe a little bit further north there and south there.
And the first ward is further north.
And the 1st ward border has been moved further north. Right there. So any other comments or observations on at this point?
Don't have a map like before, but this is much harder to tell.
Yeah, it would be useful if we had the current ward boundaries drawn.
So if you give me like 3 minutes, I could probably do that.
Okay.
I just need to figure out real quick on the fly how to do that. But yes, that's what I was just thinking.
Okay.
That would be better because then you can compare it to.
Yeah. Yeah. But we're not doing bad. We're only doing this once every 20 years. I think we're at a schedule, and I will say under budget. Do we have a budget? We have no budget. So,
It's hard to say, what,
so we're right at.
yeah, when you get free software.
Yeah. All right, so folks that are online, we're taking a minute to see if we can pull up the existing ward boundaries. We actually, you can upload a map of the current wards as an overlay. That's what he's working on.
Do you want any explanation of how you all apply?
Yeah, I think the risk is if we claim a map, we start to get
No, I agree with that.
personal about it.
I mean,
I think something might be obvious.
Some. All right, so
I mean, I did.
That being the risk, let's, if
I
if you know which map it is, let's,
The ripple effect.
yeah.
Like, if I made a change here, but I knew something, I would move population into a word at one end, knowing that.
Mhm.
So that's why I call this sort of rippling that things each time know I'm not using to, this moment, it's not really too much. And also, if I moved, yeah, I didn't move a single block, but I was just a group of blocks thinking, okay, so this is a neighborhood, so.
Okay.
this is it work. But I've forgotten some of that. I remember any example that you discussed with, various working members about.
Mark, I think if you turn off this district line here,
Or if you change the opacity.
or this, turn off that district line.
I think I just need to edit it. It's coming in,
Okay.
so I need to do it on that layer.
And
Okay, there we go.
Yes.
Mark, if last minute edits were made, will that reflect?
And so when you did it,
Uploaded version.
I grabbed these at about 4:07. So if you did something after that, I probably didn't get it. So I think, that's
All right, so that's.
doing what we want, and I can zoom around
Okay,
and
so the solid lines show us the current ward, the colors are the proposed new ones.
yes, and I can crank that up.
And I gather this is Councilmember Wynn's map.
Yeah.
So do you wanna walk us through this one?
So, being that I knew my word best, I started off with the easy chop, which is what I call the plan handle. That's 1,000 residents right there. And if I remember, Ward 1 needed 500. And so I moved all of this into Ward 1. Actually, not quite. But that's where I started. So I started with this by moving most of this into 1. And then, and then from there, I then sort of processed out because you were
I was a little bit under.
okay. I found something for you elsewhere. So.
Yeah, it looks like you gave
So
this section, it's the fourth ward too.
yes, so I
Yeah.
gave that section. Yeah, okay, that's how it worked. So I gave that section to the fourth ward, then to use to zoom out a little bit. And then in order to make sure that first ward got more, didn't get everything down below, but so I added a section for the university here that you can see that little, trapezoidal, that little trapezoidal area.
Yeah.
And then up, and if you look up and zoom out again. So.
I was like, I'm just gonna move so it stays zoomed in. So if you just want to tell me a direction to
Oh,
move.
okay. So. Then I added to the fifth ward from the seventh ward, being conscious of the fact that Eleanor Revelle had told us that the canal is a community of sorts, but I think there's no way there really isn't very many therapy that can work into the fifth ward unless you take some of this stuff. Then I shifted. You can see I shifted a section from the 6th into the 7th because I was, as I said, sort of just doing the ripple effect across. And then if you can scroll down.
It's behind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then I made some of these stair step adjustments. It's already a stair step. So I evened it out and tried to even it out along either Ashland, Asbury, or Dodge. I was looking at as sort of more arterial streets. Then, if we scroll down a little bit more, then I added, oh, I know, I added a section behind the high school, west of the high school to the 5th ward. There's one little slip, that section, which is behind the high school. I added, and the further over is the canal. So I added that to the 5th ward. And down below here, I took from the 2nd ward and added to the 9th ward, and then shaved some from the 8th ward and put that in. Not, you know, in this part, not knowing what the neighborhood configurations are like. Being aware that this, you know, these might be, obviously, there might be pieces to adjust. That's pretty much what I did.
Okay.
I mean, I did a few days. As you're doing it, you're trying to figure out, okay, what just changed? So.
And it's easy to go down a rabbit hole and forget how to realize it was not the right direction, and then you have to back up, go down a different one.
It's kind of hard to back up to.
Yeah.
Once you've gone so far.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I did, mostly I did it in very small increments. And realizing that if you're gonna move some immediately, then you're gonna have to move other things in at the other end. So,
All right.
so trying to get them within, my goal was to get everything under 100. All of the numbers under 100. So the 1st ward is shy 97.
Mark, can you go to the statistics?
When I wasn't looking at statistics, I was just looking at the raw numbers. And the 5th ward is below by 87. You know, and that,
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out if there's a way to add a little bit more without splitting a block, but that's where I got to.
Okay, let's go back to the map, and we want to take some comments on this map, and then we'll go to the next one. Any committee members want to weigh in? Councilmember Burns, Councilmember Reed.
I appreciate this map in that I feel like it very closely followed our guidelines, and so I think this is a very strong map fitting in.
And there are lots of other ways, other things you could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, once you start moving things around, you realize that. But it was also trying to keep in mind what we had heard.
Right. All right, let's go to option B.
Is this online already, or you haven't?
These maps are not posted online yet. They, all right, so here is option B. I am not sure who this one belongs to.
I think it burns.
It's probably Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Let's take a look at the statistics for option B, and Councilmember Burns, I think this one is yours.
Okay, yeah, this is mine. This is and I also wanted to say with Councilmember Wynn's map, I also appreciate it. Mine is certainly a work in progress. I was trying to get, comfortable with the tool, comfortable,
Yeah.
going from precinct to block, which is part of the reason why, I'd like to take feedback from the day and spend some more time using the tool before we start to narrow down the maps. But I tried to incorporate some of the feedback that I've heard in the 5th ward about, seeing if there was a path to move the 5th ward up to Church Street. And as I think Councilmember Wynn said, once you start to move one thing dramatically, then, you have to make other decisions, which I think the most difficult part about trying to move the line up to Church Street in the 5th ward is what happens to the 2nd ward. I wasn't able to. I think you'll see that it's difficult to find a way to maintain the population that we need to in the 2nd ward. I think I got pretty close in some of the other wards in terms of trying to use Councilmember Wynn's a number to get something close to 100. But again, once you make one dramatic change, it's difficult to manage it all. So.
All right, so we're not, since the option B is still at 12% total deviation, we're not gonna present this one as is.
So,
Depending on how things shape out tonight, Councilmember Burns might want to keep working on this one.
yeah. So, Councilmember Burns, under this one, this still keeps three council members, representing the downtown, correct?
I hope so. I did not. That was the last part I wanted to check on, is to see if. But again, what really we've heard from, I brought it up. Councilmember Harris brought it up. Former Councilmember Holmes, as well as other 5th warders, is like, all right, what does it make sense to bring Darrow up, Wesley up, and Ashland, parts of Ashland up to Church Street? And so that's really what I tried to achieve. But it automatically creates a 2nd ward island, which we can't do. And so then you have to, move 4 up a little bit. Then you got to move 1 over, 5 over. And it just, again, it sets into, it forces some decisions that then you have to figure out how to reconcile on the back end. So, but I think it includes, I think the 5th ward would have a part of the downtown area, but I'm not positive.
That's
Mark,
what,
could you zoom in on the downtown? Yeah.
well, we don't, we have the overlay on it.
Oh, yeah, I've got to add it to the new one. Sorry.
Kind of.
And of course, I have to adjust it.
It just blows my mind.
So this is.
You want to be able to see the underlying streets a little better.
Yeah, just that without causing any more confusion. And make it a little more
I think this one has it shown. Downtown is really just wards 1 and 4.
1 and 4 and 5 is.
Yeah, 2 is out of the picture and 5 doesn't really come close enough.
So that's oak. But it,
Yeah, I mean, that's,
If we're claiming this section right here is downtown, it's kind of
No,
a weak claim.
Yeah.
But this one is not a finished product anyway, so let's not
right, okay,
spend too much time worrying about it.
so should we go on?
Yeah. So option C.
oh, that was.
is that you?
This one, yeah, this one is me, and let's put the overlay on it.
And let's check it when Mark is ready, but I think the deviation on this one is 3.8%. So not quite as close to 0 as option A, yeah, 3.84%. So the trade-off to me was, do I make clean or do I minimize the amount of changes? And this is where I ended up with relatively few changes. So in terms of the number of voters that would find themselves in a new ward, I don't know what the number is, but that would be an interesting thing to track perhaps. So
That's an interesting
It looks like you and I did something kind of similar down here at
Yeah.
8, 9, moving a few blocks, from 8 into 9.
Did you use to export? Maybe if I can send it to you.
Should just go share it with me. But I think he owns all those maps and that's okay. Sorry.
If you got another one, we can
Yeah, I have the link.
figure it out on the fly. All right, so Mark, you can zoom out. Relatively few changes there.
So,
I moved this section from the 2nd ward to the 9th ward.
okay. What street is that?
This is, what street is this here, Martin?
That's block east of Dodge. What is that? That's Dewey.
Dewey, right there. From the 4th ward, I gave Robert Crown and these blocks west of Ashland to the 2nd ward.
Okay. Mhm.
We could go northeast a little bit. Again, same as option A, took this panhandle out of the 3rd ward. I gave it all to the 1st ward in this case.
Okay.
And you
You can't see it.
Oh, wherever Jonathan's pointing, the mouse can be there.
Yeah. Yeah, right there.
Okay.
And I kind of reconfigured downtown here a little bit, just playing with some numbers. I ended up here for no particular reason other than that's where I stopped playing around.
And then can you go?
And so it's zoom. Oh, and also I cleaned up this zigzag
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So it basically made the border Ashland.
Right.
Between the 2nd and 4th ward, all the way up and down. So Cameron, you can zoom out a little bit.
So you still have the downtown for 1st, 2nd.
Yeah.
and-
So downtown is still 1st, 4th, and 2nd ward. You can see I did not
Yeah.
really change the 2nd ward very much up here at
Yeah.
all.
I didn't change that at all either.
I did give this block to the 5th ward, this chunk right there to the 5th ward. I'm not super thrilled about this little kind of appendage there, but it's minimal change, so at least it meets that requirement.
And then how did you find that extra for the 5th ward?
So I moved, I gave the 5th ward this block here.
Yeah.
This block here and this block there.
Ah,
That was
okay.
a big chunk of population in that
All
block,
right, so it's
525,
okay, that makes sense.
right?
Okay.
So then looking at the 7th ward, the 1st ward, I gave this chunk from the 7th to the 1st. Not a huge number of people, 321, I guess, if that number is correct. But it does make the 1st ward a little bit more compact.
Yeah.
And then if you could, that way, so I kind of cleaned this up here. It moved this block from 6 to 7. I did do some further playing around with this border up here because the deviation that we're looking at here is, go quickly over to the statistics. It's the 6th. As it's the 1st and never mind. That was one of my rabbit holes. We go back to the map. I did some playing around and cleaned up that border and played around with some stuff over here and got my deviation down to less than 2%. But it started to look a little bit more complicated than it needed to be. Less clean.
So this is very clean. This looks, yeah. And it's 3.9%.
It's 3.8.
Okay.
So we could get closer to 0, but I don't think we necessarily have to.
No, I mean, I did what I did, but with this recognition that other council members are going to be able to say, no, that one,
Yeah.
that block should go here versus here.
Yeah.
This is how that neighborhood views itself.
All right, any other comments on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I like what you did with the first ward, making it more, more compact and more contiguous.
Yeah.
It's not actually more compact. And to raise the ninth ward, you were able to just take a few sections. That must be some fairly.
Yeah,
down-
these blocks here were fairly, 567 if that's that
that did-
number. right
I don't
there.
know that number is.
We don't know.
Yeah,
We don't know if that's
But that
the
was-
exact number, but.
I think that might be the old precinct number, and I'm not really
no,
sure
it
how to
couldn't
turn
be
it.
that high.
It couldn't, okay.
Yeah, so no, that's not.
So, yeah, so these blocks here are just a few here and there.
Well, I meant the population for the precinct.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what all those high numbers,
Yes.
that's what they
Right.
mean.
All right, so,
Okay.
anyway, that's another option.
Yeah.
Wait, is part of 9 going to second?
The bold lines are the current ward boundaries. The colors are the proposed new ones.
Thank you.
So part of that, part of 2 is going to now.
Gotcha. And which street is that?
No,
Is this Darrow here?
So the lavender, the dark lavender.
that's the one that's Dewey.
Here's
North,
Dodge,
South Dewey,
Dodge and Dewey.
and the bottom of it's Cleveland.
Yeah, so it's, west and Dodge.
All right. Should we look at option D? You have a new option D?
I think the link that I shared should be a last link there.
Oh, did you share it in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. It's, you made it view only, so I can't add.
Yeah, here, let me, I'm gonna copy and let me add this link here that should be edited. I realized that. Here we go. The link that just came in.
I just need to reshare.
Yeah. Okay. Let's maybe start with the statistics to make sure this is right. Yeah, okay, 8.65. Low 10%.
Well, I got 2.2. I didn't have to do that, crazy thing.
Got a 1.8 file.
A lot of stair stepping.
Yeah, 6 and 7.
Yeah, oh, I guess I'll.
And Ward 2 was turning arrows.
I brought somebody's watch your pad. All right, thank you. Let's start at the north side of town and work our way back. We're down. So nothing changed here in sixth ward, that left that alone. I did, if we go over to scroll up a little bit. So I added a bit into 1 here from the 7th ward. And then we can scroll down a little bit, added a bit of the 4th ward there. I, unlike everyone else, added this to 4 as opposed to 1. Left that the same.
Well, I split
Okay, split. Yeah. Oh, split it between 4 and 2.
4 and 1.
4, yeah, that's what I meant to say. 4 and 1. Okay, and then added, as we can see here, a bit of 5, a bit of 2 to 5, so right around here. Still couldn't get rid of this mole. So we'll scroll down south a bit, further south. I guess the biggest change was the 8th ward. Again, I think we all know our wards the best, and I wonder if it would be interesting for all of our colleagues to go through a similar exercise, or whoever wants to. James Park would be in the 9th ward here. There's really no population there, but 9th ward has a nice big park. The biggest shift here is, then there's a few shifts here into the 9th ward. The biggest change would be, and then assuming that that would also be an 8, I couldn't get the change there, is that the 8th ward would cross the tracks and go to the lakefront. There's really no population here, except for the new building that is coming online here at some point. 25 people living here, 21 here. So those are changed there. And the reason for extending the 8th ward to lakefront there is I do believe, there would be very few people impacted by that. But I do believe spreading, just like our downtown, having, multiple wards and diverse wards representing our downtown, I think having multiple and diverse wards representing the lakefront. This would be the only majority minority ward that would have some lakefront. Can we look at the statistics real quick?
How did you only have 50 people below, in the bottom there? That can't be right.
And
It's all cemetery,
it's
except
all
for
the cemetery, and so I
because
didn't
that
include-
top edge is under
Yeah.
South Boulevard is where the apartments are.
Yeah, so I didn't include any of those apartments there, except for
So you went down the alley.
yes.
Okay.
You were able to do that?
I didn't do anything special. That's
So between the 2010 census, we went from 750 census blocks to 1,500. Basically, the census started going down the alleys. Now, I don't know that I would recommend that for redistricting, but that's what they've done. So it's sliced a lot finer than it used to.
I don't think every alley was sliced because there were a lot of times when
I mean, I
I
can.
noticed some alleys were, and some blocks were defined by alleys, but most were not, at least.
So right there, I just kind of turned on
Yeah.
block. So now you can see when I hover over them,
Yeah.
that's a separate block.
Yeah.
And now small like ones like that, I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't. But I think if you go further up, there's probably places where a larger block is broken up.
and is there a way to? I was trying to figure it out how to slice Sheridan Road so it goes all the way to the lakefront as opposed to that sliver there.
No, because you see how when I hover over it,
Yeah.
that block is that entire stretch all the way up, I keep zooming out, that whole dark area when I
Yeah, yeah.
hover, that's all considered one block, I guess.
Okay.
Census block.
Yes.
So you can't, that's still not a lakefront.
So are we unable to? Do we have to follow census blocks? I mean, especially since no one lives there.
I mean, that is the building block for redistricting, I believe, and that's what you're supposed to use, I think. Because you can't get stats on it otherwise. That's the whole
Right.
thing, is you
I'm
can
of two
drive
minds
stats.
here. If I agreed with what Devon was trying to do, which I don't, but if I agreed with them, I would argue that clear nobody lives here.
Yeah.
We could draw the
Right.
line right there, which is what you're trying.
Right.
However, I don't think it makes sense to put this portion of Evanston into the 8th ward. Because the few folks that live here, in terms of communities of interest, are relating to the folks
Well, I do.
right across the street,
Across the street.
rather than across the tracks.
Well, again, essentially, no people who live there are in this ward, other than maybe a few folks are going to be at the new Lot 1 building in that top little notch there. But for the most part, the communities will maintain. I guess there are 25 people living at the cemetery or somewhere. Adjacent.
No, you're adjacent. Yeah. And I know them.
Yeah, so like those numbers that you're seeing, since I turned on the blocks there, those are the block population.
That 1174, or is
That's for the whole.
Yeah, the
precinct?
big numbers for the whole precinct, and I believe that's the old precinct,
Right.
not something new, because we don't have new precincts.
Okay,
That's,
so I
the
think-
county decides that.
one of those label boxes would turn that number off, I think.
Well, for all the reasons I stated the first time you raised it, Devon, I still object to this.
Yeah, I figured that would be the case, but.
And to me, this violates the two principles: one, minimal changes, and two, keeping communities of interest intact.
And not crossing man-made
And-
boundaries.
Yeah, to me, I certainly agree that it breaks the man-made boundaries, but I think as far as minimal changes, yes, geographically it looks different, but we're talking about fewer than 100 people that would actually be impacted by this. So I still do think it meets the minimal change as far as people who are impacted by the new board boundaries. This is just a small post.
And so where,
And I will say, part of my thinking there, sorry, was, we have, we have a strong border with Chicago in the 8th Ward. And I think maintaining that border with Chicago all along helps create some synergies with the 8th Ward and council member and the 49th Ward of Chicago council member really being able to work together on that full stretch of the border. Or at least the stretch that reaches to the 50th Ward and then the. And then the man-made boundary issue, which I agree, this 100% violates that. I don't know how sacred we should keep. I mean, we know that in part some of the man-made boundaries were meant to segregate and separate communities. So it makes sense, like the canal, maybe it makes sense as keeping that as a man-made boundary. But the rail line.
Well, there are 2 railroad lines in Chicago.
Yeah, OC2.
all right, any further comments on option D for Devon? All right, how should we proceed from here?
Well, it sounds like Bobby wants to work some more on his map. Is that true, Councilmember Burns?
I mean, I will say after seeing these maps, I think I took took more of a experimental approach with my first version, first trying to see if what it would look like again to move the 5th Ward, fully up to Church Street without having kind of that 2nd Ward island or a small kind of narrow area and then that kind of expands into another part of the 2nd Ward into downtown, almost like it's reaching out towards the downtown, trying to, deal with that. I think what I ran into is one that it changes the demographics of the 5th Ward in ways that are even concerning to me, which is why I would want to, still take some time to work with it. But also it's just hard to figure out how to get the 2nd Ward back the population it would lose without making dramatic changes elsewhere. So I actually like the maps that Councilman Newsman and Councilman Nguyen that you've offered. I still think we should take some. Yeah. So I mean, the map that I made is not ready. Is not a finalist map. It's not even a map that I like. So I certainly wouldn't want to submit that at this time. But I'd love to look at a closer look at the maps that Councilman Newsma, you and Councilman Nguyen made to see if there's any small changes that I would make. But I'm open to, again, I think both of you did a good job of, as they say, following the assignment. You know, so which gives me a little bit more reassurance that these are some, you know, strong maps that might be ready for you know, to advance you know, to the public.
So we have some options. If we want to maintain our stated schedule, we have 3 maps that we could release as finalist maps. I think that Councilmember Wing's map and my map are close enough that maybe with a little bit of extra time, we could combine them and make one map, and then have 2 maps. Have something that's fairly similar to option A and C, and then we have option D. That's one possibility.
Which I want to note, I too would like, I'd like to look at your maps and incorporate, I think some of the principles that your maps have really captured into my map. So I would even like a bit more time. I get that, you know, there's almost no chance that I get to the lakefront, but I do think, you know,
Well, I think something that I would be very curious about, Devon, is to know how the changes that I made along between you,
Mhm.
between 8 and 9, how they affect neighborhoods. Because I was just trying to minimize the amount of movement, but that doesn't necessarily understand the neighborhood dynamic.
Yeah.
So,
And I will say that what I try to do with again, I know my ward best, and I don't know the entire city, and I've knocked on doors
sure.
in a while in the entire city. So, you know, my thought is there is a strong, you know, single family residential presence in half of the 8th ward that I think really matches the character of the 9th ward, which is a strong single family home ward. And I think there is a benefit to, you know, allowing those folks who have maybe more similar interests to have more power in one ward, which is the 9th ward, to continue to have that similar interest in the 9th ward. And then the folks who are living in denser housing, which is really the southern part of Evanston, living in, you know, having a strong base of renters and condo owners that have some representation from the south end of town, and help guarantee that keeps some diversity in the at least living arrangements of folks on the council. Help guarantee that there's someone who's living either in an apartment or, you know, in a condo and not a single family home representing South Evanston.
So how did you act on what you just said?
What I did was I added more of the single family homes into the 9th ward.
Oh, I see it now.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. Sorry, we didn't have a class.
And then kept more of the denser apartment portions of the 8th ward together. And that's even why I wanted to go toward the lakefront, because there are, you know, more, you know, apartment buildings, denser units in that area. I didn't want to go too far or north really at all, beyond South Boulevard, because the character of that neighborhood really changes. It's a much more affluent, it's a very different.
Well, the 3rd ward has everything.
Yeah, the 3rd ward has
It
everything.
has multifamily, it has single family, it has commercial, it has residential above commercial.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think that's fine to actually have a mix like that. I mean, you have that mix, right? Some mix like that right now in the 8th ward.
Yeah, we have the mix in the 8th ward. I do think that, you know, our council has historically been represented by folks who, you know, have certain living arrangements. And so I do think intentionally creating a ward that represents the interest of, you know, renters, condo owners is something to consider.
Lolita,
Hi, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
I think it would be helpful to have maps sent out to residents so they can see the original map with the, maybe a translucent overlay of the proposed changes so that they can see the physical changes.
well, that's what we were hoping to do after this meeting, is have some solid maps that could be released for exactly that purpose. I'm not sure that we're at where we're hoping we were gonna be at this time on February 28th. So, and rather than spending an hour and a half here and trying to slog through it in real time, maybe the best option is we just push our schedule back a month.
I mean, you and I could meet and talk about, what the difference is between our maps, because we're both, what is it?
Yeah.
3.9%.
And-
I was 2.28.
And consider these kind of work in process maps, and then come back next month with solid maps.
Yeah.
Now that we've all had a chance to see what's going on and get familiar, become familiar with the tool.
And I think if we could, you know, if both Councilmember Newsom and Gwen, if you combine your maps into one, I would love for, you know, whatever alternative map, or if it's my map, or it's Councilmember Burns' map, I'd love for one of them to take into consideration. I know this wasn't one of our guidelines, but, you know, we know that there are some pretty large developments that are coming online, and there's, you know, maybe 4 or 5 throughout the city that I can think of off the top of my head. And we know that, you know, those may have a few hundred people per building, and maybe I would love to take into consideration some of those, you know, developments. And
Well, you know, I think that would, any other time I would say, well, no, I would say that's a good idea, except things are just so fluid right now that I'm not sure that we should count things that have not,
Well,
before they're in the ground.
but to that point, there are developments that do currently exist, or are in the process of being constructed that weren't captured in the 2020 census.
yeah,
So I would agree that maybe the buildings that are currently under construction or have been constructed that weren't happening, maybe we just keep those in mind.
Right, there's
I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole and try and estimate numbers, but to the extent we can get that total deviation down as close to 0 as possible, that kind of does that for us.
then it doesn't really matter if you have a 400 person, would be huge, but
Yeah.
it would have to be pretty big. We could still be so close to 0.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't throw a ward out of balance.
and I'm thinking my ward, I've got the Anne Rainey senior building, which I don't believe, I know was not included in the census, which is a lot. Truly is another.
Church.
Yeah, there's Howard Chicago Avenue building, which is only
So, just to reiterate what we said in previous meetings, we're aware these buildings exist and have people. We don't know exactly how many people. The numbers we're obligated to use for our process are the census numbers that we're dealing with. If, you know, anything we do above and beyond using these census numbers is an attempt at future-proofing the map to,
or not just future proofing, but I mean, we're setting in place a map for the next 10 years. And if we know that on year 1, there's already, you know, buildings that had thousands of people, you know, spread out throughout the city, or 8,000, thousands.
yeah, but if we do that, theoretically as perfectly as theoretically possible, we would ideally not have to redistrict in 10 years.
Sure, yeah.
So that's what I mean by future proof. So I think we are deciding to
Come back
to postpone our entire schedule a month. We have plenty of time to do that. And come back to this committee meeting next week with 3 or 4 really solid maps. Understanding that Councilmember Burns he's going to keep working on his. Councilmember Reed might do some work on his as well. And Councilmember Wynn, maybe you and I can
work together.
see if ours fit together. We don't have to force them.
We don't. I mean, we're both well below the
Yeah.
we're below 5%.
So I think that seems to be the consensus of the committee. We'll push everything back a month. Do we, it's public record now that these rough draft maps are out there. So for the sake of full transparency, I will get these somehow downloaded, turned into a PDF, and we'll put them on the committee webpage.
I mean, I don't know if we should do that yet, because we're still in such a, I think everyone here who's really interested, you have every right to request it, but I don't know if we should put it out yet.
Well, I think
Particularly-
Bobby's still,
Bob's still working on his, like,
Yes,
if
it's
we're ready.
Yeah, I think it could create some confusion because the map that I made is not final at all. I mean, I was down to the wire moving lines here and there. Like it's not ready. It's not final at all. So it would be, I think it would be more confusing than anything else.
If I'm completely comfortable not publishing our homework
I think we wait because,
or our rough drafts.
until next time, because
Okay.
if we have time, Bobby's still very actively working. Tom might be still actively working.
I'm gonna try to do it without, I took my shot, you missed every shot you don't take, but we'll see if I can redo this without, going to the lake.
Yeah. I mean, what I think is kind of remarkable is, at least initially, from having been here 20 years ago, how these are remarkably close. The ones that we've done are remarkably close. Whereas, I mean, 20 years ago, there were so many maps and they were all over the place. I think it helps having this tool too.
All right, so let-
I agree.
Yes.
I was here 20 years ago and I had to ring.
Oh my gosh, so you do.
I threw my own party when 2014.
Yes.
well, okay, let me, Mark, if you could stop sharing your screen and I will
So
go
here's
back to
someone else
share
who was
mine.
there,
Another
who
group
saw it
here,
too. And you stayed with the city.
Okay, so what we are saying is basically everything, all of this stuff gets pushed back a month.
Yes.
Councilmember Nguyen?
Yeah.
Councilmember Burns, you're agreeing that we're just pushing everything back a month?
Yep. I
Okay,
think that's we would benefit from that. Yep. Thank you.
all right, cool. Hey, so let's say, let's push it back 3 weeks. Or what I'm getting at here is let's publish some maps in the packet so the public has a chance to look at them prior to our next meeting. So our next meeting is March 28th. And so let's just self-impose a deadline of March 21st. Does that work, Councilmember Burns?
Yep.
All right.
That works.
March 21st, all, final list of maps will come back to me. Lolita, I'll get that stuff to you and they will be published in the packet. So members of the community have a chance to look at them before public comment at our March meeting. Cool?
Yeah. I mean, I'll look at mine again, but I think I'm gonna print out.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
All right.
All right. There being no further business before the committee, I will declare the meeting adjourned at 8:15.
Wow.
All right. Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh,
Joe Vallis, number 1, and Brandon Johnson, number 2.